I'm doing this so that I'll know which video this is, right? Okay, so in the last video, we talked about aperture and shutter. And so I think I talked about aperture in the last one, and now I'm talking about shutter. Okay, so the light comes in through your lens, right? It goes through the aperture, which we just talked about, and then it has to go through the shutter, which is that curtain that's going to open and close to expose that sensor, which is where your image is being created. Okay, so the shutter speed, so let me go back to the aperture. I am an aperture priority type shooter. I go into a situation and I say, how do I want this image to look? And I consider the depth of field is a big deal for me. So that means that I'm going to set my aperture. Remember, if you want a real blurry background with just a small amount of the photo in focus, you're going to have the big aperture with the small number. If you're doing a landscape or a group photo, you want to come down here and get a smaller aperture, but the number's going to be bigger, right? And so that's how I think when I go to shoot. Now, you're gonna do you. So you got to figure it out. But I'm just for the teaching's sake show you how I do it. Okay, so what that means is because of how much or how little light is going to be coming in through my lens, I'm going to adjust the shutter accordingly. Now, if I'm at a ball game or some kind of event where there's a lot of motion, I'm going to go shutter priority because I want to get those capture those images in motion. Or if I'm doing where I want to get a water drop falling in midair, then I need to have that shutter speed is going to be the priority. But for the most part, for most of my shooting, I think about the aperture and the depth of field. So I wanted to kind of show you. So let's say I'm going to take a picture here. So I turn my camera on, the whole thing. Get to where my settings are. I've got my ISO on auto. I've got my focus on automatic. And so I don't have to worry about those. So I'm going to set my aperture first. So let's say I want to take a photo of that framed picture there. I'm going to go into my f-stops, right, which is my aperture size. So down here, the small number means the large opening, which means that I'm going to get a very small amount of that in focus. If I go way up here, then I'm going to get all of that in focus, okay? But let's say I just want to take a picture of that photo there. I'm going to maybe go to 8, okay? So that leaves me with a pretty good amount of light. But here's what you can do. The next setting is going to be this shutter speed. So here's a little trick. If you set your aperture, and then you can adjust your shutter speed by rolling this, and then you can see how it's going to look if you use this back viewfinder thing. If you're looking through your camera, you're not going to get that ability to see the lightness and the darkness change. But let me show you on this how it looks. Okay, I'm going to take a picture of that. So you see the image is pretty bright. Then I can change it and make it really dark. So what I'm doing is I'm making that shutter really fast, so I'm not getting a whole lot of light to that to the sensor. But then I don't know if you see the numbers, but this is like 1/1600th of a second. So as I make it slower, I'm gonna have more light hit my sensor. So I like to keep my shutter speed, for me, because I'm older and I'm shakier, I don't like to take photos, unless I have a tripod, under, let's say, 1/80th of a second, because it'll make it blurry when I'm taking it. So I try to keep it above 1/80th of a second. So I'm going to be at 1/320th of a second to take that photo. And then I get it like I want it. Maybe I'll go a little bit darker to make it a little moodier. And then halfway down to focus. Come on. And then take the picture. Okay? So that's a little trick. Set your aperture, then adjust your shutter speed accordingly. Again, if you're in a situation where you need to capture action, then your shutter's the priority and you'll adjust your aperture accordingly. Okay?